You're welcome back from that break. This is still the AM Club coming to you live from the Mix24 studios, Oleander Street, East Legon, Accra, Ghana. My name is Miriam Uduak-Mensah. We're about to have a great conversation right here on the show. I was mentioning to you earlier, I mentioned to you earlier that I was having a conversation with a friend of mine last night, and they were having conversations around the cocoa prices that have dropped, what they think should be done. Restoration of the prices is an ask that we see a lot of, politicians ask, obviously from the other side. Many not sympathizing with farmers, but also others saying that, listen, this conversation is beyond the Ghanaian government. The only thing right now is that they're not admitting that they have not communicated well enough. So just this morning, when I was getting ready to come on air, I saw this story, and so I want us to get into it before we get into a conversation with my guest in the studio. So officially, you're welcome to the show. Now, I saw the story, falling global prices leave Ivorian cocoa unsold, farmers unpaid. Or cocoa unsold and farmers unpaid, sorry. So falling global prices leave Ivorian cocoa unsold, farmers unpaid. And this is a story of a more like a mediator, one that buys cocoa beans from cocoa farmers, and he has a warehouse stuck with cocoa beans unable to sell. Obviously, that also means that he's not unable to pay cocoa farmers. So let's quickly get into it before we get into the conversation with my guest in the studio. Sold bags of cocoa beans are stacked amongst to almost to the ceiling in Sokau Danogo's warehouse in Ivory Coast, Western Dakar town, where his cooperative is struggling to sell to exporters following a fall in global cocoa prices. Exporters have been refusing to pay the guaranteed 2,800 CFA per, that's a $5.9 per kg farm gate price. The government set at the start of the 2025-2026 crop season, according to cooperatives. Now, the exporters say the slump is in global prices, which hit their lowest level in more than 2 years last week due to falling demand, has made cocoa from the world's largest producer too expensive. Danogo said he relies on the export sales to pay farmers, but now unsold stock is piling up and debts are accumulating. Things haven't been going on well for quite some time now, so everything is at a standstill for the moment, and we currently owe farmers a lot of money. He told Reuters during a recent trip to Dakar. Donogo's hope is that Coffee and Cocoa Council regulator will step in to buy the unsold bags. In January, the regulator launched a program to purchase 100,000 metric tons of cocoa beans that had been held for weeks and was forced to accelerate the purchases earlier this month on concerns about declining quality of inventories stored in poor conditions. They have assured us that they will buy back the product. Donogo said no price options for farmers. So, again, let's try to connect the conversation. Because last week, that'll be, I think, Monday, when my guest came here, we had a conversation about this, and they said that, oh, I mean, when you go to Ivory Coast, well, they're selling at the same price, and they're not reducing prices. Well, this is the situation in Ivory Coast, one of our biggest competitors, I believe, in cocoa, selling or buying, or whichever way, or cocoa farming, as you would want to put it. Well, joining me in the studio, I'd like the gentlemen to introduce themselves, and then we'll get into the conversation. I'm going to start with you, please.
Thank you very much, and a good morning to our viewers.
Yes.
I'm Abraham Jimabuje. Yes, an organization development consultant and cocoa expert. I've been with cocoa farmers for the past 15 years.
Ooh.
And a student of demography at the University of Ghana.
So you do understand the conversation we just had about what's going on
exactly.
in
And I'm also a farmer, so I'm in it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I work with cocoa farmers.
So you are hurt. Right now you're in pain. Let me just laugh at your pain a little bit. Please, would you want to...
Yeah, so my name is Hilary Adongo.
Yes.
I am the executive director for an NGO called Restorative Seed Society. Yeah, so I work with farmers also. Yeah.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Again, this is a very... I'm going to start with you as a farmer. Really, how do you feel about this ongoing price cuts. In fact, the people on the minority side have given you a name for what's going on. The head cuts. This one is the head cuts for you. They're asking for a restoration of your prices. But then, really and truly, as a farmer yourself, how are you able to relate this conversation?
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'm a farmer and a consultant and a student in the cocoa sector.
Okay.
So I feel the politicians are talking too much. It is a systemic failure by successive governments. Cocoa has been here with us for over 100 years. In 1930, Ghana was the leading producer of cocoa in the world. As I speak now, we use catalysts to break cocoa. Catalysts to break cocoa. After 100 years, what are we doing? So it's not just about price reduction or not. It's about failure of our systems. And it's pathetic. You see, so we don't even have to compare. It's a shame for us to compare as a nation.
Wow.
We should now be thinking about what went wrong. What happened that we find ourselves in this situation. Who did what and what must be done going forward.
Yeah.
It's not about thinking about who did well and who didn't. It's not about political score. No. It's about thinking about the future of cocoa. As I speak to you now, Ghana is moving towards a population badge, where youth population badge, where we have a higher percentage of our population being youth. Yeah. And youth unemployment among is about 38%. Where are they going? And cocoa has sustained us for about 100 years. So this sector is a very good sector that every government should just leverage to give youth the employment they need. And interestingly, consistently, the youth is not interested in going to the cocoa. Even those in the cocoa farms are running to Accra. It's a disaster for the nation.
Yeah, but when you have a system where you wake up in the morning, initially, I think this would be last year, there was an increase in your cocoa prices. By how much? 400 it is?
It keeps increasing. It has been on a
then all of a sudden there's a cut of 1,000 cedis plus.
Yeah. So that's where the issue is.
How do they want to get into a sector like this?
It's not about the world markets.
Yes.
Okay. So now, if we have a sector like this where we need to rather encourage a lot of our youth into, so that we can absorb a bit of the unemployment system, because Ghana, as it stands, we don't have any sector that can absorb the overwhelming youth who are unemployed.
Absolutely.
That's the reason why the government should have done everything possible to make sure that he didn't cut the cocoa price.
Yeah.
That's the challenge. It's not about what we are getting or not.
Exactly.
It's about the disincentives that the government is giving to the younger folks. So now you are trying to prove a point that there's no need to go into the cocoa sector because it's not a stable sector.
Absolutely.
And that is the challenge that, for me, I feel that it has to be a national discourse, not a political talk at all, because it's a looming danger for Ghana. Yeah. That's the concern.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. So again, we're having the same conversation, because if there's a sector that I'm told is very lucrative, I'm to get there, and then all of a sudden, I realize that it's not a very stable, sector. What am I going to do there? I might as well stay where I'm at, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But let's come to you. When this conversation started, a lot of people made it look like it's a political conversation. Political, like you said, people are using it to score political points. Yeah. Like we said it, we didn't say it. It's a global a problem, or it's not. Some people want to use the money to buy cars. Others want to use to buy houses, and all of these things over here. From your own perspective, what do you think the fundamental issue could be, and how could we solve that?
Okay, so thank you very much. When this issue came up, one of the things that came to mind was for me to trace if there's a history to this. And then I discovered that this same situation happened in 1930. It happened in 1937. In fact, it was the reason why the Gold Coast ended up instituting or putting together the cocoa marketing board at the time. Okay. And so this same situation happened, where farmers even protested some bent their beans in protest because a few companies, European companies, decided to, dictate prices to the extent that it was very offending to the farmers. And people, decided that, okay, we would rather bend the beans in protest than sell them. Others kept them, they got moldy and all that. So this situation has happened before. So what we should be looking at is that, so has the Cocoa Marketing Board, which is now Cocoa Board, has it achieved, that its purpose? It's just like the League of Nations that was put together to forestall a second world war. It failed. And so the United Nations came in. So I think that somehow the Cocoa Marketing Board didn't really do a good job. So somewhere in 84, a PNDC law 81 was passed. And that's where the Ghana Cocoa Board, was formed. So when the Cocoa Board was formed, one of the things that I looked at the act, I just tried reading through the act yesterday. One of the things I noticed is that they are supposed to be doing research. They are supposed to be adding value. But one of the things that we see today is that the same things that happened, like he mentioned, almost 100 or more years ago, are the same things that they are doing today.
The system hasn't developed.
The system hasn't developed. Cocoa beans is what we export. But the cocoa value chain is not just about the beans. And that's one of the things that the institution of Cocoa Board, we need to really think, because this is an institution that has grown to become so much dependent on the proceeds from cocoa farmers. So how do we ensure that they even reduce how much they need to operate? The operational cost for Cocoa Board is way high. And when I saw the story about the salary cuts, and then I was told that they can be able to save about 40 million
from just salary cuts.
From salary cuts in 1 year. I don't know if that story is true, but that's serious.
It's within their season. They have seasons that they...
But this is 20% of
senior staff,
and then and 10% of management or something like that.
Of junior.
Yeah, but if they can save just this amount from these percentages, then it means that they spend a lot just to operate Cocoa Board. And one of the things that you realize in the act is that I think Cocoa Board is beginning to get into areas that it is creating issues for itself. So, for instance, the issue of, I spoke with someone who works also in Côte d'Ivoire, in the cocoa space. In fact, in Côte d'Ivoire and in Ghana. And one of the things I realized is that, so in Côte d'Ivoire, there is a bit of some liberal, way of managing it. I cannot just buy cocoa here in Ghana and go and sell because I need a license from the government. It becomes illegal when you find me, I found my own cocoa and I'm carrying it to go and sell anywhere. I'll be arrested. Because that's not how it's supposed to be done. So government has taken over that whole monopoly. But there are other regimes where government doesn't even play a role. So what government can do, maybe Cocoa Board, we cannot say at this point that it's not relevant. But what we can say is that, can we begin to look at the operations of Cocoa Board? For instance, can they license more buyers? So that the system is more competitive and not to have, Cocoa Board going into direct buying, therefore increasing their operational costs. Because historically, we see that the amount of revenue that cocoa farmers get has never gone beyond 80% in this country. Never. So it is possible that they can increase that if they begin to relinquish some of the things that they are doing. For instance, the marketing. So that cocoa farmers can be able to, earn a lot more from the work that...
Absolutely. Which is pretty much what, again, the two major countries that deal in this buying and selling of cocoa are asking for. And we also cited the story of cutting salary, and I said to a very good friend of mine that it is very um, it's a very lazy way of thinking if you want to move forward. I hear the money you're mentioning, and I hear it's good money.
Yeah.
That if we're able to retain that money into the system, obviously it will be able to solve one or two issues. But what is this sustainable? Who is agreeing to this?
So
what are the sustainable plans, to curb this issue completely? I mean, I don't see how this works.
may I have many questions? How sure are we that money is going to be cut?
Even if they decide, let's assume they will. How long are you able to do that?
Right.
Is it a permanent decision?
It's actually just for this season. Yeah.
The challenge is that cocoa productivity keeps on declining. That's the danger. Yeah. Now, the average farmer is 55 years. So the cocoa farmer population is aging.
Absolutely.
So this they are doing is they are collapsing the cocoa business. Absolutely. And that's disaster for the country. So I think when I hear politicians talking and they want to score political points, it's alarming and disturbing.
It is. And still on this conversation.
What are you talking about? We're talking about sustainability. Have you even thought about this? We're still doing labor intensive in the cocoa sector. And Cocoa Board has been there for 70 years. What are we doing? No improvement.
The best solution we hear right now is that, we are going to cut our salaries. Because some politicians said that you're buying new cars and they're paying you about 100,000. So yes, we're going to cut salaries. Does it make you happy? Yes, everybody should be happy. But the cocoa farmer, who is supposed to be in the middle of this entire conversation, is now being used as a pawn in the game. Well, we do have Martin Ohene Enim, PhD finance candidate, chartered accountant and chartered economist. We have him online. He will be speaking to us on that aspect as well. Good morning, sir. How are you doing?
Yeah, good morning. How are you still doing?
We're doing very well. The gentlemen are also already fired up. We're getting straight into the conversation of cocoa here on the show this morning. Now, I don't know if you heard where we came from, but we've talked about the price cuts and what we could do that could sustain the farmers, really, because they are the most important players in this game. If they do not farm, we do not have cocoa beans. If we don't buy, if they don't sell to us at the price that is helpful to them, their operations are also going to be affected. From an economist point of view, what is your take on this conversation?
Okay, good morning, and thank you for having me. Obviously, we need to have this conversation on a broad basis, considering the critical strategic role that this Cocoa Board and its stakeholders, the farmers and the LBCs all play in the Ghanaian economy. There's a policy mandate on Cocoa Board, and among many is to drive foreign exchange, support agriculture, particularly the cocoa sector, to become a viable sector that is supporting the economic fortunes of our country. One that will help in the value chain, diversification of our export base as a country to be able to stabilize many of the macro, contribute to the steady stability, ensure economic growth, also allow for inclusive growth for our workers. So a conversation of this nature should be devoid of any biases, but should be focused on how we can contribute meaningfully to the discussion to ensure that we are achieving the kind of policy objectives that the Cocoa Board was set out. The challenges we are seeing now is a legacy challenge, and we shouldn't only focus on the happenings that we are seeing now. It's a legacy challenge that has gone across many governments, and the kind of mismanagement that has engulfed that body. Many are one. You see that there is this switch in the policy mandates of the Cocoa Board. They've moved largely into doing other fiscal, we call it quasi-fiscal activities like investments in cocoa roads, which is not the mandate of the Cocoa Board. And that has created a lot of mismanagement, poor procurement activities in that regard, and has caused a lot of debts to come on Cocoa Board. So if you see the reform that has been proposed by IMF, World Bank, and of which the government has adopted, is to move the cocoa roads, which are quasi-fiscal activity. If I say quasi-fiscal activity, it means it is the responsibility of government to construct roads. It doesn't matter whether it's Cocoa Road, it doesn't matter whether it is in Bogatanga, whether Accra. The objective of every road is to support productive activity. So, Cocoa Board cannot assume the responsibility of central government, which is supposed to provide roads to support production. So that's a policy switch by Cocoa Board, and that affected because they have not built the capacity to be able to do and the expertise to be able to engage in road activities. And for that matter, that has created a lot of liability on the books of Cocoa Board and has not made them liquid enough to be able to meet their focus group, which is the cocoa farmers. So it created some debt and has impacted adversely the sustainability of Cocoa Board to be able to be a prudent regulator in that respect. Another thing that has been a difficulty in respect of Cocoa Board has been the mismanagement, gross mismanagement. You see, we must come to a point where strategic institutions like Cocoa Board and the likes, who are critical to our economy, we must have the people, leaders, and who have both the technical expertise and their leadership qualities to be able to drive the institution. Institution like Cocoa Board is not a joke. Look at the amount of contract they sign. Look at the functions that are in the Cocoa Board. You need people with not only fine political inclination can be there, but we should be able to match both the skill sets that is required to deliver the mandate together with the leadership qualities that are necessary for an efficient running of the institution. And that has been one of the bane that has caused the many challenges we are seeing. And there's mismatch between the kind of skill set that we need to deliver the mandates and the kind of people that we put there. So it has caused a lot of challenges there, and we have legacy issues at Cocoa Board, and that has been also a challenge. Another challenge is the procurement activities grossly. There has been one of procurements, financial malfeasance, and all of ill activity that has not helped Cocoa Board to deliver the mandate. In the case of another difficulty that has been an issue has been the way pricing is done in terms of the trading, whether to go for spot price. And when we say spot price, it means you price at the ruling price at the international market at a point in time. You use that, or you go for forward price. And all the two options have their own advantages and their disadvantages. Yes. The challenge we are seeing now is arising due to a switch in the trading model from a forward sales arrangement to that of a spot sales arrangement, where the Cocoa Board then declared a price that we want to give to the cocoa farmers at the beginning of the season, and that is incidental to or has a correlation with the market price. While then it means that you need to be setting the kind of farm gate prices you are seeking to give to your farmers, particularly when you are adopting the spot price, because the volatilities in the international markets is dependent on the demand and supply conditions outside your control. Yeah. So it is important that when you are coming with farm gate prices that you want to give your farmers, all those considerations must be taken, so that if price falls, you don't come back to them and say that, oh, I was benchmarking that price that I gave you, I promised to give you on the international price. Yeah. Now it has gone down. Please, let's renegotiate. So we should have a framework that is sustainable in terms of how we price our commodities and the promise we give to our cocoa farmers. Right. And that has been a challenge. Yeah. The forward price is that another disadvantage when you do the forward price, and the disadvantage there is that because if the spot prices are becoming, when you say forward price, it means that you agree a price today based on you agree on a price, not necessarily based on what is ruling on the market, but you agree a price based on what you foresee in the future, right? Mm-hmm. But if the fuel price is lower than what the international market price is ruling at the point, the farmers will also complain that then the money you are giving me is too small. Then let me do smuggling and give it to Cote d'Ivoire, which is a nearby market, for me to get higher prices.
Yeah.
So that also have its own disadvantage.
Its own disadvantages, yes.
What we are seeking to do now is that what the pricing model that has been recommended as part of the restructuring is one that is based on international market price. That is best. That at any point in time, the cocoa farmers will receive about 60 to 70% of the ruling international market price, having guaranteed them a fixed price. That is sustainable. That is sustainable because if you give them spot, if you are doing sports and you promise the price, and later the market price goes down, this is a kind of difficulty you will face as is happening right now. But if what is paid to the cocoa farmers is a function of what the international market prices are, then that is a sustainable way of going about this conversation.
Okay. All right.
In addition, one of the reforms which I'm happy about is the fact that government is converting its debts. You know, what happened is that they got to a point where Cocoa Board was not able to meet its syndication loan obligations, right? So they need to fall back to the finance ministry and the central bank to be able to support them to be able to meet those obligations. And that was captured as a debt to Cocoa Board. But over the period, we all know that Cocoa Board is suffering and has not been able to pay those debts. Those debts comes with yearly commitment of interest expense, and then part of the principal that must be paid to the finance ministry. But because of the financial challenges that Cocoa Board has, those debts cannot be paid. So the discussion is that let us then convert those debt instruments to equity, and that can help us to release Cocoa Board of the obligation to be paying yearly commitment to Bank of Ghana and then that of Finance Ministry.
Right.
So that gives some relief. Another good thing that is coming is that you see, value addition is very necessary to diversify your exports. You know, and you earn more when you add some value to your cocoa beans, right? Now, the current arrangement that we have with our syndicated banks and then our buyer do not afford us the opportunity to be able to add value because the bean serves as the collateral for the facility that is given to us. So the current restructuring or the arrangement that is government is seeking to do is to then use the domestic market where bonds will be issued to investors to be able to buy government those securities and invest in Cocoa Board. In that regard, our obligation will not only be our obligation will be paid in foreign exchange dollar, which will exert pressure on the Ghanaian cedi, right? Now we are going to pay to domestic investors coupons and principals in Ghana cedis, and that will help relieve Cocoa Board from the volatilities that may arise on the exchange, foreign exchange front, which may increase their loan repayment amounts to their syndicated banks and then those buyers that were loaning the facilities to them. So this is a good move, and it also helps us to be able to. Another good move is where they want to then enhance or revitalize the PBC, then will then become the mechanism for adding value to our export. The cocoa beans, for us to get more value to be able to export, to get more. So these are long-term structural reforms that are sustainable, and we just hope that it's not on paper that it will actually be supported by.
Because the gentleman in the studio believe that it will end on paper. Based on experience, they believe that this is another paper conversation. But we're praying that their hopes are not crushed of a better, system that could help them. Some of them in the studio are farmers. Others are contributors to a better system for cocoa farmers. But I'm going to hold you there a little bit and come back into the studio. The conversation of whether or not cocoa has become expensive is a little relative to different jurisdictions or farmers. It has become expensive globally, and so we are not in those other countries to tell whether or not it really and truly is expensive. But you, as a player in this conversation, is it fact that globally cocoa has become
That
expensive.
they've reduced the prices.
No,
of
it has
cocoa.
become expensive. So really and truly, we cannot buy it at the same price that we used to buy it from you, as it will not help the government.
I need to get a question.
You need to get-
If they are expensive, then we should be getting more. But what I know is that now,
The prices have dropped.
yes, they've
Globally.
dropped. Yes.
Okay, so there's a session that it's not fact that the prices have dropped.
Oh,
So
it's a fact.
It's fact.
Yeah, it's a factual
Right,
something.
right.
Yeah. But
So then why are you forcing government then?
no, you fought government because this thing happened in 1930, like he mentioned. And they said that no, you need to regulate the cocoa sector. So let's get a board who will ensure that whether there's a reduction or what, they are able to, even if Ghana was saving 100 cedis from 1940, whatever, how much would have kept in the contingency fund to deal with some of these challenges? You see, we get money to do so many things, but for the farmer, no money for him. And then you want to blame it on international market. That's the challenge. So don't Cocoa Board have any fund that takes care of such incidences? If there is not, then there's a disaster.
Then the problem is bigger than we actually
Yes.
think it is. Hence my concern about the decision to actually cut salaries. Because and again, I'm going to come back to you, Hillary, that I hear your figures. It sounds good. Like, oh my God, so we're able to save this amount of money. We're happy people. It sounds good, but that's in my young mind is not sustainable.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
not.
And it's like more of how should I
Eye
call
service.
it? No,
Please
just
some
to
people.
I wanted to do the right term. just to please some people to keep us quiet because we are all suffering.
So they're gagging you with this.
You see, just keep quiet because we are all suffering. But even that, for me, I have a problem because how sure I am that that's just the statement it has been cut. The allowance is it going to be affected? You see, everybody is eating big, but the farmer. That's the challenge that I face. Are we not saving? Are we not? And that's why we put in place a board to ensure that
The board by now should have had a fund
Yes.
that takes care, like
Yes.
a contingency fund that takes
And-
care of
and
issues
you
like
see,
this. I
some
don't
of
see how.
the concerns, the clauses in the act, they are backward. Do you know that even me with the farmers, the cocoa that I produce, the cocoa that my farmers produce, we can utilize that cocoa for processing.
Now, I'm glad you go there. I'm glad you go there. So 2 days ago, over here on this platform, I was saying that my best performing CEO will be Sami Jemfi. And this is the only reason why. The only reason is that in this young man's young time in his position, he's created a system where the gold is not only exported, sold, or put in any form of, proper
The raw,
transitional structure. Rather, also we're also processing.
Yeah.
We're producing, gold
Jewelry.
ring, items from the gold and selling.
Yeah.
So we're not only exporting raw gold, we're also processing gold here. And for me, that is like a more sustainable decision for any CEO to make.
Yeah.
Cocoa has been in Ghana for so long.
Absolutely.
We have private institutions buying cocoa and processing it as individuals, as entrepreneurs. We have the Niche and Co. who are producing cocoa products here in Ghana. But that is a private entity. Why don't we have a Ghanaian factory producing cocoa, processing cocoa?
We have the Ghana one, the Golden Tree. It's a Ghanaian,
Golden trees.
Yeah.
CPC.
Come again.
It's just one brand.
Yeah, but at least.
By now, but
we
we
just
keep
need
going
to
at
give
least.
credit to them where they do. But the challenge is even that, how many of us can buy that chocolate? You see, there are a lot of systemic challenges that old 1984 document needs to be reviewed. You need to review it and then bring in,
More
innovative way of doing things. Like I said, even now, no matter how big your farm is, you still need to use a cutlass.
What is the alternative?
No, technology.
Yeah, that
China
should be,
now has
of
a
course.
machine that when you harvest, the cocoa enters and it breaks them. By the time you get to the output, you have the cocoa beans.
Wow.
China is having it now.
China has it.
Yes.
In Ghana, I cannot buy it.
For about over 100 years. We are still breaking cocoa. You saw my image there in the farm. I was breaking cocoa pod. And that's the only option I have. You see, Cocoa Board should have been doing these things for the cocoa industry. Innovation. And that's what the global north is doing. No, farming is not for the aged, it's not for the illiterate, it's for people who mean business.
Right.
Because it has been put in a way that the youth, they are just attracted to farming. What about us? You tell young people, you encourage them, let's go and farm. So, no, I can't do this kind of jobs. I can't still use axe to harvest cocoa. What are we doing? Mechanization is not being done. So me, I don't just see the price cut has given us the platform to talk about this.
All the other systemic
challenges.
Yeah.
That's why people see us. Somebody was attacking me on Facebook that I'm talking blah blah. When MPP was there, I was not talking.
Now look at this.
Because price,
And you go and check their age. They are young people
No,
who should be more concerned about.
Me, what I do is trying to encourage young people into cocoa sector because I know the way things are going, the youth badge is not going to be used against us because we are not utilizing, we are not creating any decent job for our young people. And if they don't get jobs to do, it's a disaster to the nation.
It's
and
actually
for
a
me,
security risk.
that yes, as a student of demography, that's my concern. Where we have a huge chunk of young people who are unemployed and they begin to do other things against us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, this conversation came up again, say about some 10 years ago on climate change. And we have been talking, I think somewhere last year, 2 years ago, it was intensified with people who were not believers believing that climate change can actually affect many things that we do. Well, climate change and diseases affecting cocoa, that's cocoa farms. How prepared is Ghana to protect its cocoa sector from these long-term threats? Ones that we do not have control over. But how prepared are we? I'm going to have you take that one.
Yeah, so there's no doubt that climate change is here with us. And then one of the things that minded states or countries do is how do we mitigate? How do we adapt? These are the questions that we have to ask our leaders. Climate change affects cocoa production in many ways. Temperature, I'm sure, as we all know, all crops grow within a certain temperature range. So if there are very erratic fluctuations, it affects flowering and all that. So it reduces that. So in fact, the average production of cocoa in Ghana is just about 400 to 450 kilograms per hectare. When you could actually do up to 1,200 to about 2,000.
Yeah, 1,500.
Yeah, thereabout. You can do as much as that. So this is the reality that we are faced with as a people. And the earlier we started doing something about it, the better for all of us. And so the issue of climate change, I think that it's here with us. We are seeing it in the decline of cocoa production. I mean, now I don't even know our position as a country because we were the top producing.
We were the first.
Exactly.
And we came to the second.
Exactly.
And now we are dropping.
We are dropping because there are other countries that are doing much more. So I think that this also goes even beyond cocoa board. It has to be done at the Ministry of Agric level. How do people even know how climate change affects them? What can they do? And I think there's a lot of indigenous knowledge that we can leverage, you know. But one of the things that we can also do, or Cocoa Board can do, for instance, is that if we begin to ensure that we use technology, we do a lot of research to improve the varieties. That's also one of the things that, I mean, Cocoa Board is mandated to do, you know, but they are not doing it. Exactly. And also to explore the value chain of cocoa. Why are we talking about beans for 100 years? When we can use the pod, I understand there's some work going on in some other countries where they are using the pod to do electricity.
In fact, right here in Ghana, somewhere up the mountains, there is actually a company that is using the juice, the
cocoa juice. They call it the liquor.
In fact, this one is even it's called the liquor. That slimy thing around it. That cocoa liquor is used for juice on its own.
Absolutely. What about the cosmetic industry that uses cocoa? Look, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry that we can explore. So even if in Ghana we decide that part of our cocoa we are going, and of course Ghana produces premium cocoa.
Exactly.
You know, And so if we decide that, look, we are going to go into the cosmetic industry, look at the way our women use. I mean, I don't think you will start anything cosmetic and you fail, because this is the ish, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's one of the things that Cocoa Board should begin to look at. How do we improve research? How do we get some of these industries? And in fact, it is in the Act. So some of the things that our colleague mentioned, they are going into roads and they are going into other things. How does that, you know, that only ends up increasing your wage bill.
Absolutely.
And that's why only 20% of people's salary and emoluments can amount to 40 million, you know, cedis. That should also tell us that there's so much that they spend on managing Cocoa Board, the administration. And these are things that if you free these monies, it goes to add up to what the farmers get.
Still on some of the issues that our cocoa sector could be facing is a big conversation of galamsey, and it's in two ways. One, that you know, our water bodies are being contaminated, and so we're not getting good water to, you know, farm properly. And there's some people giving up their farms for
galamsey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Galamsey. These are two major concerns of people still affecting the cocoa sector. How do we move fast?
So that's where I'm so alarmed at the reduction of the cocoa price. We're in the point that people and the galamsey is a direct competition to cocoa production.
Absolutely.
Direct.
Absolutely.
I've seen farmers, I've been with them. You go to the farmer harvesting 10 bags of cocoa, and now you go there and that place has been dark, because I'm on the field currently. And I'm asking the young people, what will keep you in the cocoa sector? And they are telling me, if the price is increased, then I will manage. And so those that are even thinking about leaving. But if there's a price increase, they will stay. Now, the research team I just they told me, the people are not responding to our questionnaire because of the price cuts. You understand? So now, where are these people going? They are now going to move to the unethical mining, illegal mining, galamsey. And that is a huge disaster to the nation. So price cut at this point it's one of the most unpopular decisions to take.
Absolutely.
Because the repercussions are many, too many.
We have agreed on this platform, all of us, all four of us have agreed that this price cut has like the biggest player in it is the global front. What do we then do? And you mentioned if Cocoa Board had a contingency fund, it would have been, clearly they don't have. They don't have.
And that's
unless
serious.
they come and tell us otherwise. So if they don't have that contingency fund, they do not. Their other option is a very unsustainable decision to cut salaries. What is the way forward? And I'm going to have the recommendation from all three of you, but I'm going to start with our economist online, sir. Mr. Martin Ohene, are you still with us? Okay, Mr. Martin Ohene, are you with us? Okay, it's okay. So okay, can you hear me, please, Mr. Martin?
Yes,
can you hear me? Yeah, Martin. Yes. So I'm saying that we've all agreed over here on this platform that the Cocoa Board needed a contingency fund. Clearly they don't have, unless you tell us otherwise. We obviously don't see anything coming from there. Obviously because of the decision they've made to cut salaries to help cocoa farmers, which means that there's no fund, there's nothing, there was no research into this development in the cocoa sector. And also the fact here we've all agreed is that the Global Fund is contributing largely to this price cut. What then would be your recommendation to Cocoa Board for us to move forward?
Oh, but we all obviously know that the financial situation of Cocoa Board is bad, so we don't even expect them to have. They don't have any liquidity to support the cocoa farmers, right? Otherwise, the conversation will not be. The option will not be that let's reduce the farm gate price that we have. They would have just gone into the buffers that we have and then use it to pay them. It's also, if it's also not coming from government, to be able to meet the difference. It tells you that government also have a tight budget that they are working with. So the decision then is to cut. Obviously, the decision is then to cut what is due there, what the government thinks is appropriate based on what is ruling. But of course, the cocoa farmer will not be happy with that. They want to maximize their benefit from the cocoa beans, and they are the reason why we have cocoa board. The salaries that are paid to the CEOs, to the board, to every member is the cocoa farmer that is bringing that money. So they are the number one stakeholder in the cocoa business, and what is due them, we must make sure that we make them happy. So currently, for me, what the question as to what to do, I think there's a road plan or map that the government has put in place. As I mentioned earlier, let's see how that will pan out.
Yes.
We don't want it to attract dust on the shelves, but we'll go into implementation that will deliver sustainable gains to our cocoa farmer.
So the roadmaps given so far is very helpful, in your opinion?
Yes.
Okay.
On the paper document, it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
For example, one of them, which is very, very important and crucial, is that we want to add value to our cocoa beans. Which country would want to do that? Because the nestle and the lice that take our cocoa beans, they transform it and produce products such as Milo and the lice that we take, right? So, and those things, when they come back to this country, they are so that higher.
Okay, we're losing Martin, and so I'm going to come back to the studio, gentlemen, so that we conclude on recommendations moving forward. I'm going to start with you, the farmer.
Okay. So, for me, this is what I see. It's a rising youth unemployment. It's a critical issue for the nation. Declining cocoa productivity, which could have been absorbing these young ones. And we have an aging farmer population. So all these recommendations we are talking about, if there's no human resource to man the cocoa, it doesn't work. It doesn't wash. So my first recommendation is that we should revitalize cocoa through deliberate youth integration. We should make the cocoa sector so attractive to the young generation. If not, cocoa will not be there for us to talk about any policy or whatever. So that's the first thing I would recommend. So we have to absorb unemployed youth. And that's my worry for the price reduction. Because those who are there were to serve as models to those who we are encouraging to go there. And if these ones are so disturbed and want to give up because of price cuts, then it's a disaster for the sector. So government should rethink. If they can reinstate, they should do it. And I think it's possible they can do it. Yes. And then we should try and improve how cocoa is done. We should innovate. So cocoa board should now be thinking about, I'm thinking about sustainability rather than even the pricing aspect. If you're able to do these things and we know that, yes, we have the human labor to be in the cocoa sector for us in the next 100 years, then some of these measures will come. And then we should introduce technology in cocoa so that the labor intensiveness of cocoa farming will be reduced. Okay. Now, people, for instance, there are some of the cooperatives who are using mechanization, and they have a younger population in their membership. They don't use cutlass to weed again. They use slashes, but it's expensive. They can't afford. Okay, they have mechanized pruners, and they are using now. If the government is to intensify some of these things to make the cocoa farmer a bit relaxed, then sometimes, even if you reduce the cost, they wouldn't be so much disturbed because they know that there's a huge support for them. Okay. So this is one thing I want to recommend to stakeholders.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to come back to you, sir.
Okay, so before I make my recommendations, one of the things I want to say is that if we don't act, particularly if Cocoa Board doesn't act, it will be shooting itself in the foot. Because, I mean, if the trend goes on for the next 10 years, we are likely to have a very unsustainable Cocoa Board. With the impact of galamsey, climate change, and unstable international, cocoa prices, we are going to lose a lot of the young people. I mean, a lot of the farmers I mean, like he mentioned, the average age is already 55 thereabout. There are many of them who are not, I mean, there are many young people who are not interested. It means that there's no future for cocoa farming. If all these people go, that will be it. And so, I mean, we've already mentioned some of the key things that should be done. I mean, it's not rocket science. Look, go back to the act. Even if you say that many of the things there are old, let's go back to the act. There are things that Cocoa Board is supposed to be doing, add value. And one of the things I've mentioned, I work with farmers and we use shea butter. And by the way, Cocoa Board is also supposed to promote shea and also coffee. Yeah, you know. So, but I work with farmers and we train them to use shea butter to make pomade. You know? So why can't we explore? This is simple. Why can't we explore the use of cocoa for shea butter? I mean, for pomade and things like that. And you know, we have this cocoa butter or something that was there. I don't know which company.
It's an Ivorian company.
Yeah, this is something we can do.
Queen Elizabeth is from,
exactly.
From MP Gandor.
Exactly. These are things that we can do.
Yeah.
Look, and if we fail to do it, Cocoa Board will collapse.
Yes.
Because the truth is that if you become unsustainable and you are not focusing on some of the core things that you should do, then you are not going to get the money to fund you. And then that's how the collapse is going to happen.
Something as simple as the core mandate of research has also become, I don't know whether they
Absolutely.
do it or not.
So
it's just really unfortunate that we have little time to discuss
so also to focus on the research and all these things are in the act.
Yeah.
And then also the last thing is that the issue of farmer support. Look, there are simple implements that people can make. You go to the universities and people have done researches on simple things that can be used. School of Agriculture, the Institute for Environment and Sanitation Studies. People have done researches. We can pick these things and work on. So it's not as if it's far-fetched. No. These are things that we can explore. Cocoa Board can explore, you know, and let's eschew politics, as he has mentioned, and let's be, have a national conversation around this. Yeah.
And I'm grateful to you, gentlemen, for joining me have this conversation. So it's been such an impactful one, and I believe that if they do listen, the future of cocoa and the cocoa industry is very bright. Like he rightly said, these are no rocket science. These are no rocket science. These are very simple things that even young people in the universities have done research on that you could totally tap in. If you don't want to invest in that, you could totally go and that's what those institutions are there for. Yes, it's just really sad. But yes, right here on the AM Club this morning, we'll discuss the recent cocoa crisis, what the future holds for Ghana, and we've had some really great recommendations from the economist point of view, to the farmers' point of view, to the researchers' point of view, so every other aspect, including mine as well. So it's been a holistic conversation had right here. Do make sure to continue having this conversation as we want clarity and, of course, development in this sector. We're joined by Hilary Adongo, Executive Director, Restorative Seed Society. It's an NGO. Abraham Jima Buje is an organizational development and capacity building consultant, member Ghana Psychology Council as well. Martin Ohene Enim, he joined us via Zoom. PhD finance candidates, chartered accountants and chartered economists. They joined us this morning. You see the heavyweights we brought on the show this morning just to have this conversation. That's how important it is. Over here on the show, we learn and we grow together. We're going back. We're going for a quick commercial break. When we come back, conversation continues right here. The plug is up next right here on the AM Club.